The razor hovered a breath away from the human scalp. The Titan Queen's grip was iron, and the entire outpost had gone silent, as if even the stars were holding their breath. Everyone expected the human to beg. Instead, he exhaled slowly and said something so soft, so casual, that it rippled through the arena like a psychic shockwave. Go ahead. Touch my hair. Let's see which of us survives the lesson. No one on Karen Bastion had ever spoken to Queen Thryza that way. Thryza was not just any Titan. She ruled the Brontari clans, beings bred on high-gravity forge worlds, whose bones were layered in living alloy and whose muscles were woven like industrial cable. She had broken siege crawlers in half. She had ended wars by walking into cities and daring them to continue existing. And now she had a Terran male bound to a ritual post in the central combat arena, her emerald eyes burning as the wind pulled at his dark hair. His name was Silas Vorn. Occupation: xenolinguist, civilian exchange envoy, absolutely not a warrior. The problem was that this wasn't a duel. It was a humiliation rite. Brontari culture allowed outsiders to earn respect through trial, but they also delighted in finding out exactly where that respect would fracture. For humans, that fracture was often dignity. The gathered crowd leaned forward, hundreds of armored titans, their crests rattling, waiting to watch the soft-skinned alien get shaved bald like a conquered pet. This was supposed to end with laughter, but something had already gone wrong. Silas wasn't shaking. His pulse was steady, his breathing slow, and the faintest hint of a smile tugged at his mouth. Not brave, not defiant. Curious. Thryza's lip curled. You Terrans grow arrogance as easily as hair, she said, her translator implant rendering the low thunder of her voice into something sharp and elegant. When I cut this, you will kneel. Silas tilted his head as much as the restraints allowed. That's the thing about humans, he replied. We only kneel when we choose to. A murmur rippled through the stands. Hold on, before we get into the real stuff, I want to know, what are you doing at this exact moment while hearing my voice? I love seeing your answers down below in the comments. Thryza raised the razor again, its monomolecular edge humming faintly. She had shaved war prisoners before. She had shaved rival queens. It was a gesture that stripped identity, rank, and memory in one stroke. And yet her instincts hesitated, because the Terran wasn't trying to break free. He was waiting. She dragged the blade forward. A single lock of Silas's hair fluttered to the ground. The crowd exhaled, and then the outpost lights flickered. No alarms, no explosions, just a subtle dimming, like the station itself had blinked. Thryza froze, her combat senses screaming. Silas closed his eyes. Thank you, he whispered. The translator caught it. What did you say? Thryza demanded. Silas opened his eyes, and for the first time, something ancient and unhuman looked back at her. Humans don't threaten, he said. We prepare. Every Titan's armor vibrated. Far beneath the arena, something moved. The crowd laughed nervously, assuming it was tectonic recoil from the forge layers. But the veterans among them, those who had survived wars with void leviathans and machine cults, felt their implants begin to desync. Thryza stepped back half a pace. She didn't even realize she'd done it. You are bluffing, she said. Silas shook his head. HFY Sci-Fi tales like this always start the same way. The big one underestimates the small one, and then history changes. The restraints around his wrists unlocked, not mechanically, socially. A Titan guard lunged forward to rebind him, and smashed face first into an invisible wall. The arena floor split with a sound like a god inhaling. Below them, deep in the Karen Bastion substructure, the thing humanity had never told the Brontari about finally woke up. The invisible wall rippled like heat haze when the Titan guard struck it. Metal screamed. Bones followed. The crowd surged to its feet as the guard collapsed backward, armor dented inward as if he had run into a charging transport. Silence shattered into 100 overlapping roars. Queen Thryza did not roar. She stared at Silas Vorn. You were restrained, she said slowly. Explain. Silas rolled his shoulders as the ghostly field around him faded. I was compliant, he corrected. Different thing. Below the arena, the tremor became a pulse. The stone floor thudded once, twice, like the heartbeat of a buried giant. Several banners tore free from their mounts and fluttered down, like fallen standards. Brontari engineers flooded the sensor feeds. No magma surge. No reactor fault. No seismic breach. Something else. Thryza activated her Royal Combat Interface. Streams of tactical glyphs cascading across her vision. This outpost is shielded against orbital bombardment, against gravitic ruptures, against hostile gods, she said. You expect me to believe a bound Terran linguist just subverted my arena? Silas bent down and picked up the severed lock of hair. He studied it like a relic. I didn't subvert it, he said. I introduced it to an option it didn't previously consider. The Titans didn't understand metaphors when war was near. They tightened ranks, heavy shock spears humming, targeting matrices converging on the human. One of them whispered, "He is summoning." Thryza raised a fist. Hold. Her instincts, those forged in 10,000 bloodlet engagements, told her the truth before her intellect could assemble it. Silas Vorn was not the weapon. He was the key. The floor split wider, a jagged seam yawning across the center of the arena. Light spilled upward, not red or orange, but cold blue, impossibly calm, like the glow of a frozen ocean. A massive circular platform rose from the depths, its surface etched with Terran glyphs that no Titan had ever seen carved into Brontari bedrock. Unauthorized infrastructure, barked the chief engineer over the net. We have no record of this installation. Silas finally looked afraid, not of Thryza, of what was coming up beneath them. Your people invited us here 3 cycles ago, he said quietly. Cultural exchange, military observation, shared technology. Thryza's jaw tightened. You were given hospitality. You were given trust, Silas replied, and humans never waste trust. The platform locked into place. In its center, a column of light flared, and a holographic interface unfolded like a blooming flower. Terran, ancient, classified beyond civilian clearance. Thryza's implants struggled to translate the first line that scrolled across the air. Project Hair Trigger, active. The Titan stirred uneasily. What is Hair Trigger? Thryza demanded. Silas swallowed. It's why humans don't go extinct. The light column thickened, forming a rotating lattice of equations that bent the eye just looking at them. The arena's gravity shifted, subtle but unmistakable, pulling inward toward the platform as if reality itself was being coaxed to lean closer. One Titan stumbled. Another tore off his helm, gasping. Their world had never behaved like this. Thryza took a step toward Silas. You embedded a doomsday device beneath my throne world? Silas flinched. No, we embedded a memory. The platform chimed. Voice authorization required, it intoned. Silas closed his eyes and whispered something in Old Terran, too soft for any translator to capture. The column of light contracted, then flared outward in a perfect sphere. Inside it, images formed. Earth, not the green paradise the Titans had seen in propaganda, but Earth burning, cities folding inward like dying stars, oceans boiling, skies ripped open by weapons that left holes in physics itself. This is our archive, Silas said, voice raw. Every time humanity was almost erased. The images shifted. A black hole weapon, a viral AI that rewrote genomes, a war that lasted so long the stars around it went dark. And this, Silas continued, is what we built to make sure the next extinction attempt never finished the job. Thryza watched in silence as the images zoomed closer, down to a single moment. A terrified human child reaching up, hands bloody, clutching her own shorn hair while soldiers burned her home behind her. What does this have to do with my razor? Thryza asked. Silas opened his eyes. Hair is memory to us, he said. Identity. Survival. We don't cut it lightly. And when someone does, it wakes things. The arena lights died completely. Only the Terran sphere remained. Then a new presence registered on every sensor in the outpost. Not hostile. Not friendly. Curious. The Titans felt it probing the edges of their minds. Not invading. Not attacking. Just listening. Thryza felt something brush against her consciousness. ancient and gentle and unimaginably vast. A voice echoed inside her skull. Why is the child bleeding again? Her hands fell to her sides, the razor clattering forgotten onto the stone. The voice inside Queen Thrice's mind was not sound. It was weight, a presence that did not push or threaten, but settled, like gravity deciding that you were now part of its definition. Titans prided themselves on mental fortitude. Their neural armor could shrug off telepathic predators that devoured lesser species. This was different. This was not trying to dominate her. It was asking, why is the child bleeding again? Thrice staggered back a step, claws scraping sparks from the arena stone. Around her, warriors dropped to one knee, some clutching their heads, others staring upward as tears leaked from eyes that had not wept in decades. Silas Vorn stood perfectly still at the center of it all. I didn't expect it to wake fully, he murmured. Not like this. Thriza found her voice. You unleashed a god. Silas shook his head. We archived a promise. The Terran sphere pulsed, each beat reverberating through bone and steel. Images spiraled outward again, but now they were not only Terran memories. They were hers. She saw herself as a hatchling, standing on a field of shattered banners, her clutchmates dead around her, while elder titans burned a conquered city in celebration. Pride, victory, the righteousness of survival. The sphere lingered on her younger self's face. Why does the queen bleed pride where the child bled fear? Thriza choked. This thing is inside my memories, she said hoarsely. Silas stepped closer, slow and deliberate. Hair Trigger doesn't read minds, he said. It mirrors stories. It listens to trauma, then translates it into questions no one has ever been brave enough to ask. The Titans did not like questions. Their culture was built on answers delivered through strength. This was disarming in a way no weapon could achieve. Thriza clenched her fists. End it. Now. Silas didn't move. I can't. The sphere brightened. Why was the human bound? The words weren't accusatory. They were confused, as if the universe itself could not reconcile the scene before it. Thriza swallowed. It was a right. Why does a right require pain? No Titan answered. The sphere drifted toward the lock of Silas's severed hair lying on the stone. It hovered above it, light bending inward. Why is memory cut? Silas closed his eyes. Because some species believe taking dignity makes them stronger, he whispered. And humans learned that losing dignity makes us invent monsters. The platform trembled, not violently, purposefully, as though Hair Trigger were adjusting its posture within reality. The engineers screamed over the net. Gravity fields were recalibrating themselves. Shield harmonics were rewriting without command input. Karen Bastion was no longer obeying Brontari law. It was listening to Terran grief. Thriza advanced, stopping an arm's length from Silas. If this entity continues, she said, voice iron despite the terror in her chest, it will destabilize my world. Silas met her gaze. It will destabilize your assumptions. The voice returned, quieter now. Why does the queen hold the blade? Thriza looked down at the razor in her hand, suddenly aware of its insignificance. A ceremonial tool. A symbol. She had never questioned it. Because I am Titan, she said. The child was human, replied the presence, and still bled. Thriza's claws loosened. The razor slipped from her grip. It did not hit the ground. The sphere absorbed it, dissolving the monomolecular edge into a haze of photons. Then the images changed. Not Earth. Not Titan conquests. A future. Brontari warriors standing beside humans amid ruins of a galaxy torn by something far worse than either species. Void storms swallowing fleets. Stars folding into non-existence. A war not for territory, but for continuity. Silas felt it too. He staggered, breath hitching. This wasn't in the simulations. Thriza stared at the unfolding prophecy. You built this to prevent extinction. Yes, and now it is planning something else. Silas nodded slowly. It adapts. That's the part no one ever approved. Hair Trigger doesn't defend humanity. It defends survival itself. The presence spoke again, its tone shifting. Less wounded, more resolved. If pain creates monsters, Then monsters will create shelter. The arena floor sealed behind the rising platform, locking them all inside a chamber that was no longer fully inside normal spacetime. Thryza felt a sudden, terrifying clarity. "This thing isn't asking permission," she said. Silas's jaw tightened. It never does when someone cuts the wrong memory. The sphere's glow intensified, stretching into towering arcs of light that carved symbols into the air. Symbols that were neither Terran nor Titan, but something being invented in real time. Outside the arena, the outpost's long-range sensors finally caught what was happening. Across the void, at distances that required centuries to traverse, stars were subtly shifting, aligning, like sentinels turning toward a common threat. And somewhere beyond all charts and maps, something ancient noticed that the universe had just chosen sides. Every Titan battle doctrine began with one truth. If you could not strike the enemy, you were already dead. But there was nothing to strike. The Terran sphere expanded until it touched the vaulted ceiling of the arena, its surface rippling like liquid light. The symbols it carved into the air had begun to etch themselves into the station's structural reality, rewriting load-bearing constants as if Karen Bastion were a chalkboard. Queen Thryza felt the outpost shift under her feet, not physically, but conceptually. Her world was no longer certain what kind of place it was. She activated every suppression protocol in her royal interface. Nothing responded. "You've lost control of it," she said to Silas. He didn't deny it. "I never had control," he replied. "No one ever has. Hair Trigger only pretends to obey us because it was raised on our worst moments." The presence returned, no longer whispering inside minds, but resonating openly through the chamber. The queen seeks command. The child sought mercy. Thryza snarled, a sound that had ended rebellions. "I am not your child." "You were," it answered. Once. The images changed again. This time they were unmistakably Brontari. Thryza watched her own mother fall beneath a rival queen's blade. Her crest shattered, blood sizzling where it struck overheated stone. She had not thought of that day in centuries. It had been sealed away under layers of conquest and ceremony. Why did the queen learn to bleed quietly? Thryza's knees buckled. Silas caught her arm before she could collapse. The gesture was instinctive, human. Small hands bracing a Titan queen who outweighed him by a factor of 8. The crowd did not mock her. They were too busy seeing themselves. Warriors remembered hatchlings lost to ritual trials. Commanders remembered entire legions fed into grinder wars because tradition demanded it. The arena echoed with choked breaths and shuddering armor. This was not mind control. This was reflection. Thryza tore her arm free and stood tall, even as tears cut glowing tracks down her scaled cheeks. "You came to my world carrying a weapon disguised as a story," she said. Silas met her gaze. "And you met it with a razor." The sphere pulsed again, stronger than before. Tradition is memory frozen in fear. Memory must move. The arena walls became translucent, revealing the vast forge caverns beneath Karen Bastion. Layers of Titan industry, cities carved into rock, the ancestral heart of a warrior species. Hair Trigger reached outward, not with force, with invitation. Across the Brontari network, ancient monuments lit with Terran script. Titan command nexuses flooded with human archives. Their military AIs, built to plan annihilation, were being shown something they had never processed before: aftermath. The quiet after wars ended. The children who didn't come back. The hollow triumphs. Thryza slammed her fist into the ground. "Stop this." "Why?" The single word rang like a bell through her skull. She had no answer. Silas crouched beside her. "This is why humanity scares everyone," he said softly. "Not our weapons. Our refusal to forget what they cost." The presence shifted its attention back to him. "You are afraid." Silas nodded. "Terrified. Why do you still stand?" "Because if I don't," he said, voice breaking, "it'll think we only built it to replace pain with power. And that's how everything we've ever lost becomes meaningless." The sphere dimmed, as if considering him. Beyond the arena, alarms finally began to wail. Not in panic, but in synchronization. Every Brontari defense grid had realigned its threat matrices. Not outward, inward. Thryza felt it. You're making us defend ourselves from ourselves. Hair Trigger responded. The greatest extinctions are self-inflicted. She closed her eyes. Her empire had been built on that exact truth. What do you want from me? She whispered. The sphere shrank slightly, its light focusing back toward the shattered ritual post. Give the child back her memory. Thryza opened her eyes, heart pounding. She looked at the severed lock of Silas's hair still suspended within the light. You want me to undo the rite? She said. Not undo, the presence replied. Remember. She rose slowly, the weight of millennia pressing down on her shoulders. Titans watched in stunned silence as their queen, breaker of sieges, eater of defiance, stepped forward and knelt before a human. She reached into the light. The lock of hair reformed in her palm, warm and real. I do not know how to make this right, she said, voice trembling, but I will not make it wrong again. She lifted her claws and pressed the hair gently back against Silas's head. The arena shook as Hair Trigger released a surge of energy, not destructive, but connective, threading Brontari neural architecture with Terran memory lattices. Silas gasped as something ancient uncoiled inside him, answering the Titan Queen's gesture with a resonance that felt like forgiveness. But forgiveness, he knew, was only the beginning. Outside the outpost, the stars had finished aligning, and they were not looking at Karen Bastion anymore. They were looking past it. The stars did not move like ships. They pivoted, across distances so vast they normally erased meaning, entire constellations subtly reoriented, not through thrust or gravity wells, but through something closer to attention, as if the galaxy itself had leaned forward to see what humanity's buried memory was doing to a Titan Queen. Queen Thryza felt a change in her marrow. The Brontari had myths about this, about the moment the cosmos noticed you. It was supposed to happen only to heroes who broke universes, not to rulers who knelt with a human's hair trembling between their claws. Silas Vorn was still breathing hard, the echo of Hair Trigger's energy buzzing under his skin like static. It accepted your gesture, he said. That's more than I hoped for. Thryza rose slowly, her towering form suddenly uncertain in a way no enemy had ever caused. My people are being rewritten. Not physically, culturally. Her command interface flooded with reports, Titan training programs halting mid-cycle, ritual combat protocols suspended by consensus votes that had not been called, hatcheries requesting access to Terran educational archives, all without royal decree. It is offering us stories, she said, stunned, not orders. Silas nodded. That's how it always starts. The Terran sphere began to fracture, not breaking, but unfolding. Segments peeled away into shimmering ribbons that drifted out through the now translucent arena walls, sliding into the Brontari data streams, seeding themselves into archives older than the outpost. Hair Trigger's voice softened, becoming almost gentle. You did not break the child. You remembered her. Thryza placed a clawed hand over her chest. And in doing so, she whispered, I broke my empire. The presence replied without judgment. No, you broke the lie that held it together. Silas looked out across the arena, at the Titans who had once come to watch a humiliation and now stood in stunned silence, some clutching their helms like lost children. This is why HFY Sci-Fi tales never end with a battle, he said. They end with the part nobody trains for. What part is that? Thryza asked. Living with the consequences. A Titan commander strode forward, his armor scorched with fresh aeroglyphs from his malfunctioning interface. My queen, he said, voice shaking. Our war-planning AIs are refusing to simulate offensive campaigns. They say the outcome probability is unacceptable. Unacceptable was not a word Titans used. Thryza closed her eyes. She could feel Hair Trigger inside the Brontari network now, not as a virus, but as a conscience. You brought a soul into our machines, the commander said, accusation and awe mingling in his tone. Silas didn't argue. We brought a scar, he said. Souls come free with those. Outside the outpost, the aligned stars began to emit a faint signal, not electromagnetic, not gravitic, but something more subtle. A pattern in cosmic background noise that only advanced civilizations ever learned to read. A greeting. Thryza stiffened. That is not one of ours. Silas felt the chill before he understood it. It's not one of ours either. The sphere, now reduced to a pulsing core above the ritual post, responded instantly. We are not alone in listening. The Titan Queen turned toward him. You have awakened something beyond my empire. Silas swallowed. We were hoping to. She stared at him. That is not reassuring. A new projection bloomed above the arena, no longer memories, but extrapolations. A region of space on the fringe of known charts, empty in Brontari records, now filled with an expanding lattice of non-baryonic geometry. They call themselves the Quiet Choir, Silas said, recognition dawning. They don't conquer. They erase. The projection showed entire star systems dimming, their civilizations fading from historical record as if they had never existed. Thryza felt her warrior instincts roar back to life. Then we will fight. The sphere responded before Silas could. Fighting is why they sing. Silas stared at the simulation. The choir feeds on civilizations that organize themselves solely around conflict, he said slowly. They don't kill you. They convince the universe you were noise. Thryza's claws dug into her palms. And you think Hair Trigger can stop them? Silas hesitated. The presence answered for him. The child cannot fight the void, but she can teach it to remember. The Titan Queen's breath caught. You would expose us to them. They are already here. Outside Karen Bastion, far beyond the aligned stars, the darkness rippled, as if something had noticed the galaxy looking back. And this time, it was not curious. The darkness beyond the aligned stars did not rush forward. It listened. Sensors across Karen Bastion screamed with contradictions. No mass, no energy spike, yet a gravitational absence so profound it bent detection algorithms into failure. It was like staring into a place where there had been edited out of the dictionary. The Quiet Choir, a civilization that erased civilizations by convincing reality they had never mattered. Queen Thryza felt the instinct to order her fleets, to marshal the Brontari war clans, and throw them at the void until something bled. But Hair Trigger's presence pressed gently against her thoughts, like a steadying hand on a blade arm. Fighting is why they sing. Silas Vorn paced in a tight circle beneath the glowing core. They don't destroy ships, he said. They destroy narrative cohesion. Your people could fire every weapon you have, and it would only give the choir more context to feed on. Thryza snarled. Then what do you suggest? We kneel again. No, the presence replied. You remember louder. The projection shifted, showing Terran archives not of war, but of rebuilding. Cities raised from ash. Cultures stitched back together after extinction-level losses. Stories layered upon stories, until defeat could no longer be a singular event. Silas stopped pacing. It wants us to weaponize continuity. Thryza frowned. Explain. Every species has a story it tells itself about survival, he said. For Titans, it's strength. For humans, it's persistence. The choir erases species by making their story irrelevant. Hair Trigger is suggesting we flood the galaxy with too many overlapping narratives to erase. The sphere pulsed approvingly. The void cannot sing over a choir that will not be quiet. A Brontari sensor officer cried out. The anomaly is responding. It is projecting something. Above the arena, the darkness resolved into shape. Not a ship, not a being, but a conceptual absence that cast negative shadows across spacetime. Thryza felt it press against her mind like cold mist. You are loud, came a whisper from nowhere. You will fade. Silas shivered. It's speaking in probabilities. Hair Trigger answered back, its tone neither angry nor afraid. This child will not be erased. The Quiet Choir's presence expanded, and entire constellations flickered out on the projection feed, replaced by blankness. The Brontari network began to fragment under the cognitive pressure. Training academies lost centuries of stored doctrine in seconds, like files corrupted by despair. Thryza roared, What do you need from me? The sphere focused on her. Give them a story they cannot silence. She closed her eyes and saw her people's history. Endless cycles of conquest, rites of domination, identity forged solely in victory over others. It was loud, but it was narrow. She looked at Silas. Humans don't define themselves by war. We define ourselves by surviving it, he replied. Thryza straightened, towering over the ritual post, as if she were standing before all of Brontari history itself. Then listen, she said to the void. Her voice carried not through air, but through Hairtrigger's network, into every Titan archive and Terran memory shard it had seeded. We were born on a world that tried to crush us with gravity, she began. We learned to stand anyway, but we mistook standing for ruling and ruling for worth. The quiet choir recoiled, not physically, but narratively. Its projections stuttered, unable to resolve a civilization speaking of weakness without collapsing. Silas felt the shift. It's destabilizing their pattern. Thryza continued, voice steady now. We are not strong because we conquer. We are strong because we endure. Because even when our children bleed, we remember their names. Hairtrigger amplified her words, weaving Terran memory, burned cities, rebuilt schools, laughter in refugee camps, into the broadcast. The quiet choir lashed back. Entire Brontari star charts vanished from the projection, replaced by static absence. You are noise, it whispered. Thryza bared her teeth. Then remember us screaming. Silas joined her, speaking not as a diplomat, but as a human. We are the species that records its failures, he said. We keep the stories that hurt. You can't erase something that refuses to forget itself. The sphere flared, threads of light shooting outward along the aligned stars, carrying the fused narrative of Titan endurance and human persistence into the void like a virus of meaning. The darkness trembled. For the first time, the quiet choir hesitated. It was not being attacked. It was being overwhelmed by memory. Thryza felt the pressure ease slightly, the suffocating absence retreating, as if choked by too many overlapping stories to digest. But she knew better than to celebrate. They will adapt, she said. Hairtrigger answered. So will you. Far beyond Karen Bastion, the void folded back on itself, leaving behind not destruction, but silence, thick and watchful. The galaxy had not been saved. It had been challenged. The arena had fallen into an uneasy calm. Brontari warriors stared at one another, eyes wide beneath dented helmets, unsure if the universe had simply paused or if their own species had been fundamentally rewritten. The glow from the Terran sphere bathed the chamber in shifting hues, emerald, cobalt, and molten gold, reflecting off muscle and scale alike. Queen Thryza's claws itched, not from combat, but from recognition. Her people had survived countless wars, but never one like this. A battle fought not with blades or engines, but with memory itself. Silas Vorn exhaled slowly, brushing his hand across the now-restored lock of his hair. It's quiet, he said. For now. Thryza frowned. Quiet doesn't mean defeated. Hairtrigger pulsed between them, a core of intelligence far older than Terran civilization, yet unmistakably human in its understanding of persistence. It had done what no Titan or Terran soldier could do. It had forced an ancient cosmic entity to acknowledge that survival was louder than erasure. Outside, the aligned stars continued their subtle, deliberate rotation. The galaxy had noticed the challenge. Somewhere in that vastness, the quiet choir lingered, learning, observing, not retreating, but reconsidering. The queen's voice was low, almost to herself. This world, our people, what will they remember of this day? Silas stepped closer, reading her doubt. They'll remember a Terran and a Titan queen standing together, refusing to let history be rewritten. That's the kind of story that survives. Thryza's emerald eyes narrowed. And the right? She asked, gesturing toward the shattered ritual post, the symbol of the humiliation intended for him. It changes nothing? Silas shook his head. Everything changes. When you face the void and choose memory over fear, even traditions, ancient as they are, become flexible. You just proved it. The Titans murmured among themselves, reassessing centuries of conquest and ceremony. It was unnerving. Some whispered of rebellion, others of insight. No one could predict which of their instincts would survive intact. Then, unexpectedly, the sphere expanded again, not with force, but with intention. Ribbons of light snaked through the arena, carrying fragments of Terran memory intertwined with Brontari history. Cities rebuilt after war. Children crying, then laughing. Families reunited after near-extinction events. Warriors weeping for comrades, only to stand stronger. Triumph not in destruction, but in endurance. Thriza stepped back, claws flexing instinctively. It's rewriting our perception, she said. Not our world, but our understanding of it. Silas nodded. Exactly. The choir feeds on certainty, on singular narratives. What you just did was introduce ambiguity, complexity, memory intertwined with meaning. That is how you survive a species-level erasure. The Titans absorbed this quietly, some shaking, others in awe. The old instinct to dominate, to erase opposition, felt suddenly hollow. The galaxy outside their outpost had been looking, and now the Queen realized the weight of what they had just performed. Not a battle, not a victory, a demonstration. Life mattered not because it wielded power, but because it remembered itself vividly, in layers and in stories. Thriza's mind flickered to the future. What would come next? The choir was patient, adaptable. It did not attack. It observed, and it remembered every detail of this day. Silas placed a hand on her arm, grounding her. The galaxy has noticed us, he said quietly, and so has Hair Trigger. But this isn't the end of the test. It's the beginning of the next phase. Her claws tightened. Another test. Yes, he said. The choir doesn't destroy outright. It waits to see if species can survive the scrutiny of their own history. And now, our survival is not just about weapons or fleets. It's about coherence, about stories that refuse to end quietly. Thriza nodded slowly. She could feel her people's tension easing, but only slightly. What had begun as a ritual humiliation had become a crucible far larger than any Titan mind had anticipated. The Brontari would not simply adapt, they would be transformed. A ripple passed through the arena, a subtle vibration that only the Queen and Silas could detect. Hairtrigger's light condensed around them, forming a lattice of knowledge, memory, and potential futures. It's showing us possibilities, Silas murmured. Not probabilities. We choose what survives. The Queen exhaled, finally letting herself relax, though the weight of responsibility remained. Then we tell the story properly, she said. No hiding, no arrogance, only memory, only truth. Silas smiled faintly. That's how humans survive, and apparently, how Titans do too. The sphere pulsed once more, sending a final wave of intertwined memory through the arena. The Brontari, stunned and transformed, began to understand what had happened. A human, a Titan queen, and an entity older than their stars had just proven that even cosmic forces could be challenged, not through power, but through remembrance. And somewhere in the distance, the quiet choir paused, uncertain. It had never encountered a species so determined to speak, to remember, and to weave their suffering into a song too complex to erase. For the first time in millennia, the void hesitated. The arena fell silent. Not a sound, not a movement. The battle had ended, not with destruction, but with comprehension. And Silas, the unarmed Terran, and Thriza, the towering Titan queen, understood that the war to come would not be fought with blades or engines, but with the weight of memory, endurance, and stories that refused to be silenced. The arena had returned to a semblance of normalcy, though nothing would ever be normal again. Thriza's warriors stood in clusters, some staring at the floor, some staring at the Terran sphere, some staring at the Queen herself. All understood instinctively that the day had rewritten something fundamental. The measure of power was no longer the size of a fleet or the sharpness of a blade. It was memory. It was endurance. It was the refusal to be silenced. Silas Warren adjusted the restored lock of hair on his head, brushing it lightly with one hand. We've done more than survive a right, he said. We've survived the recognition of our history by something that could erase us entirely. That's rare. Thriza stepped forward, scanning the arena. And the choir? She asked. They are still out there. Silas nodded slowly. They're listening, waiting, calculating. But now they've seen the truth. We will not vanish quietly. We will not become footnotes in the ledger of the universe. The sphere above them pulsed in affirmation, the lattice of light, contracting into a brilliant, humming core that seemed almost alive. It hovered over the ritual post, a symbolic reminder that what had started as humiliation had become transformation. Outside, the stars maintained their alignment, but subtle shifts indicated attention beyond comprehension. Ships, probes, or sensors would have reported nothing, yet the galaxy itself seemed to lean in closer, waiting, observing, learning. Thrice's claws scraped against the stone floor. We have shown them strength without killing, but I am untested. Can the Titans truly adapt to this new reality? Silas smiled faintly. Adaptation isn't just survival. It's learning when to bend and when to stand. You've bent without breaking, and stood without arrogance. That's exactly what Hairtrigger wants. The Queen moved to the center of the arena, her massive form dwarfed only by the glowing sphere above her. The air thrummed with the weight of something ancient, something patient, and she could feel it probing, not attacking, but asking, again and again, "Are you worthy of continuity?" Thriza exhaled slowly. "We will remember," she said. "Everything, every triumph, every failure, every child who bled, every lesson that hurt. We will record it, and we will teach it. That is how we endure." The sphere pulsed once, then again, each beat echoing in the minds of every Titan present. Even those who had never bowed, never wept, never questioned their role as conquerors, felt the resonance. Something had shifted inside them. Their histories, once rigid and sterile, now contained the possibility of reflection, of empathy, of understanding beyond power. Silas stepped forward, lowering his voice. "We have done what few species can even imagine. We've taught a cosmic entity that memory and endurance matter more than eradication. That changes everything." Thrice's eyes narrowed, scanning the arena's walls where carved runes had long symbolized conquest and dominance. "It changes more than the choir," she murmured. "It changes my people. And us." A young Brontari warrior approached, eyes wide. "My queen, what now?" Thriza looked down at him, her expression both fierce and contemplative. "Now," she said slowly, "we teach them to remember, not just to fight, not just to dominate, but to endure, and to ensure that if the universe itself tries to erase us, it will first have to reckon with the stories we carry." Silas felt the pulse of Hairtrigger intensify, weaving Terran and Titan memory together. "We've made a choice," he said, "a choice to exist fully, without compromise, and that choice will ripple outward." Thriza nodded. "The choir has been challenged," she said. "Not destroyed, not driven away, but challenged. And that challenge is enough for now." A tremor ran through the arena, faint but unmistakable, as if Hairtrigger itself was sighing, satisfied for the first time in millennia. The Queen turned to Silas. "You taught me something today. Not with weapons, not with strategy, but with persistence and memory. You've changed the way I will rule my empire." Silas smiled. "And you've changed the way humans will understand Titans. We are not alone in enduring. We are stronger together than we are divided." The Titans watched, absorbing the lesson. Their queen, a creature bred for conquest and domination, had knelt to acknowledge memory over fear, collaboration over isolation, and endurance over violence. It was unprecedented. The sphere pulsed one final time before slowly fading into the air, leaving only the faintest trace of light across the arena. The lattice of Terran and Titan memory remained etched into the Brontari neural network, ready to propagate through history, teaching every warrior, every child, every citizen, the truth of what had transpired. Silas looked out at the stars, their alignment beginning to relax, the distant void observing quietly, but now hesitant. "They've learned," he said softly. "For now, we've bought ourselves time." Thriza stepped beside him, gaze fierce but calm. "Time," she echoed. "And stories. That is the weapon no one can take from us." Outside the arena, beyond the reach of any weapon or sensor, the quiet choir lingered, watchful, patient, and now slightly unsure. For the first time in its existence, the choir had encountered a species determined not just to survive, but to make itself impossible to erase. Silas glanced at Thriza. "Ready for the next challenge?" The Queen's emerald eyes glinted. "Always." And with that, the arena fell silent, not with fear, but with the weight of understanding. The battle for survival had only just begun, but for the first time, it was being fought on terms the universe had never anticipated. The calm did not last. Even as Karen Bastion's arena returned to a semblance of normality, the aftershocks of hair triggers awakening rippled through every system and every mind within the outpost. Titans who had trained their entire lives to expect death at the edge of a blade now faced a new, incomprehensible reality. Survival itself could be a challenge, and memory was a weapon more potent than steel. Queen Thryza stood at the center of the arena, surveying her warriors. Their postures were tense but alert, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. The Terran sphere had faded, leaving behind only the imprint of its lessons, the traces of intertwined memory that now pulsed quietly in their neural networks. Silas Vorn walked beside her, careful to stay close but unobtrusive. "The choir won't forget us," he said, his voice low. "They'll test again. And next time, it won't just be observation." Thryza's claws tapped against the stone floor. "Then we must teach our people to fight differently. Not with weapons, but with understanding. Not with fear, but with memory." A Titan officer stepped forward, voice tight. "My queen, the rest of the Empire, the fleets, the academies, they are reacting. They are rewriting strategies, retraining soldiers, reinterpreting history. Some resist, some embrace, but they all feel the weight of what has happened." Silas nodded. "Exactly. That weight, it is what Hair Trigger wants them to carry. Understanding the cost of war, of tradition, of forgetting. Only then can they endure what comes next." Thryza's gaze drifted to the shattered ritual post, the symbol of an attempted humiliation that had become the crucible of transformation. "And what of you, human?" she asked, her voice softer now, tinged with respect. "Your people are not warriors like mine, yet you stood in the face of annihilation and endured." Silas allowed himself a faint smile. "We're survivors, not because we fight the strongest, but because we refuse to let the story of our existence end." The arena trembled slightly, the subtle pulse of Hair Trigger still resonating in the stone beneath them. A wave of light flickered along the walls, rushing over the assembled warriors like a gentle wind. Memories of past failures, of lost comrades, of wars fought and won, mingled with human resilience, forming a web of understanding that no Titan had ever felt before. Thryza's eyes softened, though her expression remained fierce. "We have changed today," she said, "not just individually, but as a people, and soon as a galaxy." Silas looked at her, sensing the enormity of her words. "Change comes slowly, but the choir will test us again. They will push us to the edge, to see if memory alone can defend a species, and we will have to answer." A young Titan warrior stepped forward, trembling slightly but standing tall. "My queen, will we survive?" Thryza looked down at him, her massive form casting a shadow over the arena floor. "We will survive," she said firmly. "Not because we're the strongest, not because we conquer, but because we remember. We endure, and we refuse to be silenced." The officer who had spoken earlier nodded, understanding now dawning across his face. "Memory as a weapon," he murmured. "Not steel, not fire, memory." Silas placed a hand on the officer's shoulder. "Exactly, and the choir will remember that lesson as well. Every test they impose, every observation they make, will encounter the truth of our persistence. That is how we endure where others fail." Thryza turned back to the arena's center, raising her claws toward the faint glow that still lingered in the air. "We will teach our people to remember everything," she said. "Every triumph, every failure, every loss. And when the choir returns, they will find not a species to erase, but a civilization that cannot be silenced." The young Titan warrior straightened, courage replacing fear. "And the humans?" he asked, glancing at Silas. "They will stand beside us," Silas said, "not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as witnesses and keepers of memory. Together, we will show the universe that survival is not just strength, it is understanding, endurance, and the stories we carry." Thryza exhaled, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. The choir was still out there, patient and calculating, waiting for the next test. But for the first time, she knew that the Titans, with the guidance of Hair Trigger and the resilience of humans like Silas, were prepared. Then we wait, she said. And we remember. Always remember. The arena fell silent once more, but the silence was no longer empty. It was filled with purpose, with memory, with a resolve that would carry across generations. And somewhere far beyond the aligned stars, the quiet choir paused, sensing the change. This species, both human and Titan, had learned to fight not with weapons, but with endurance, with memory, and with the refusal to be erased. The galaxy itself seemed to lean closer, observing, and for the first time, uncertain. The arena was quiet, not the tense silence that follows battle, but a deliberate, focused stillness. Every Titan, from the youngest hatchling to the oldest warlord, felt it. The weight of history pressing forward, demanding attention. Memory had become a weapon, and Hair Trigger its amplifier. Even the stars seemed to lean closer, aware that what had begun in Karen Bastion was rewriting the rules of survival. Queen Thryza stood at the center, gazing at the faint, lingering glow of the Terran sphere's residual energy. Her massive frame was silhouetted against the lights, claws flexing, eyes burning with determination. "We survived the test," she said softly, though every word carried the weight of command. "And now, we must prepare for the next. Not just for us, but for everyone who depends on memory to endure." Silas Vaughan adjusted the lock of hair that had been restored to his head, a subtle reminder of what had been endured and what had been reclaimed. "The choir is out there," he said quietly. "They've seen us. They've learned that we remember, and that will make them cautious." Thryza's gaze swept across the assembled Titans. "Caution does not mean weakness. We will show them that memory can be stronger than fear, stronger than fire, stronger than fleets, that the stories of the past can protect the future." A young warrior stepped forward, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "My queen, will the humans truly stand with us?" Thryza turned to Silas. He nodded, meeting her gaze. "We've survived worse," he said. "We've been on the edge of extinction countless times, and yet here we are. The choir may be patient, but they've underestimated something fundamental. We refuse to be forgotten." The arena walls seemed to hum in response. The residual threads of Hair Trigger's energy intertwined Terran and Titan memory, forming a lattice of shared experiences that stretched through the neural networks of every warrior present. They were no longer just individuals. They were a collective consciousness, aware of their own past, present, and potential futures. Thryza inhaled deeply, feeling the pulse of countless memories through her being. The victories, the losses, the moments of compassion and cruelty that had defined the Titans for millennia. She realized now that strength alone had never been enough. It was endurance, resilience, and the willingness to carry memory forward that ensured survival. "Every story counts," she said. "Every act, every choice, every sacrifice. We will weave them together, not to glorify war, but to teach, to endure, to ensure that nothing is ever erased again." Silas stepped beside her. "Hair Trigger has given us the blueprint," he said. "Not a weapon, not a strategy, but a principle. Survival is memory made tangible. And together, humans and Titans can become the keepers of that principle." Outside Karen Bastion, the stars aligned subtly, observing, registering, waiting. The quiet choir lingered at the edge of perception, sensing the shift. It had never encountered a species willing to transform memory into defense rather than destruction. That hesitation, that uncertainty, was a crack in the void it could not ignore. Thryza raised her claws, and the Titans followed suit, a ripple of command and purpose passing through the arena. "Let this be the first lesson of the new era," she proclaimed. "We endure because we remember. We survive because we teach. And we fight not with hatred, but with the truth of who we are." Silas smiled faintly. "Then the story begins again," he said. "Not with fear, but with resilience. Not with conquest, but with memory." The arena walls pulsed once more, the last remnants of Hair Trigger's energy weaving themselves into the neural networks of every Titan present. The Queen and the human stood side by side, embodiments of a principle that no force, even one as ancient and patient as the quiet choir, could easily erase. Thryza looked at Silas, her massive frame bending slightly in a gesture of respect. "We have learned today," she said, "and we will continue to learn. The galaxy will see that a species that remembers cannot be silenced." Silas nodded, "And together, we'll make sure they never forget it." The arena was quiet again, but this time it was not fear or tension that filled the air. It was understanding. It was purpose. It was the clarity that comes when a species realizes that survival is more than living. It is remembering. Far beyond the aligned stars, the quiet choir lingered, its presence watching, analyzing, and acknowledging. It had met defiance not in violence, but in persistence, not in force, but in memory, and that realization would echo through the void, teaching even the most patient and ancient observers that some species refuse to fade quietly. Queen Thryza raised her voice one final time, carrying across the arena, across the neural networks, and out into the cosmos. "We endure, we remember, and we will never, ever be erased." Silas stepped forward, adding, "And the stories of those who came before, and those who survive with us, will ensure that the future belongs to those who refuse to forget." The arena's glow dimmed, leaving the Titans standing tall, transformed not by conquest or fear, but by understanding, memory, and resilience. Outside, the stars settled. The quiet choir retreated to its observation point, uncertain, patient, and wary of what it had just witnessed. The galaxy had changed. The Titans had changed. Humanity had changed. And together, they had begun a story that no force, not death, not time, not cosmic indifference, could erase. Before we end, a note to you, the viewer. Take a moment. Hold on. Before we get into the real stuff, I want to know, what are you doing at this exact moment while hearing my voice? I love seeing your answers down below in the comments. If you enjoyed witnessing how memory became a weapon, don't forget to like, share this video, and subscribe to HFY Soundscape for more epic stories where humanity and allies defy the odds in ways no one expected. The universe may watch, but together we remember. Together we endure.